Hey there everybody, Ben and Katie here from Reorigin, and we're here to talk to you today about sleeping when you have anxiety. A pretty common ask that we get. People are really curious about, like, what do? I have so much anxiety, I have all this energy before I go to bed at night. I'm ruminating on everything that happened throughout the day. How do I let it go and fall asleep? So we've got some really great tips here. We've got a couple that maybe you haven't even heard before. So Ben, do you want to start us off?
Okay, yeah, so I'm certainly no stranger to this. When I was recovering from chronic Lyme, I had terrible anxiety. My energy levels would just spike right, of course, when I was trying to fall asleep, and that would lead to something called onset insomnia. Just the inability to fall asleep, regardless of how tired your body is. Your mind just won't let you fully rest. And then, interestingly enough, once I sort of started to learn how to let thoughts go, that nervous energy I found, that anxiety was still sort of trapped in my system, and I developed what's called maintenance insomnia, which is the inability or difficulty staying asleep. And I would always wake up 2 to 3 hours after I'd fallen asleep at, say, 2 in the morning, and then I would have a very hard time falling back asleep. And it wasn't until I started practicing these types of exercises that calmed my nervous system and helped me let go of those worries on a more general and global level that I really ended up finding a good night's sleep. So a few of the things that have really helped the most were, number one, the low-hanging fruit is just having a really good nighttime ritual. And when I say really good, I think the simplest explanation tends to be the best one here, right? So it should obviously include getting off of things like social media and screens at least an hour before bed. Dimming the lights can really help, sending those environmental cues or signals to your system that it's time to prepare for sleeping. And this is where some simple rituals like making a cup of tea or breathing deeply, reading a book, doing something that you enjoy, and just generally slowing down, even physically. Even if you're not feeling tired or your mind is still racing, gradually slowing down will start to kind of reduce the cadence of cycles that our brain finds itself often spinning through at the end of a day.
Yeah, having any sort of ritual, and the cool thing about it is you can kind of create your own ritual, right? Definitely, I'm a big fan of a cup of tea at night, for sure. There might be other things that you feel like work for you. A thing that really helps me, I fortunately have never suffered from insomnia, but something that just helps me relax at the end of the night and release any anxiety from the day is movement. But it's not the movement that you think. I'm not going and running a 10K and then going and getting in bed, because that's going to rev your nervous system up. But I really love very slow, methodical movement before bed. Like Ben was talking about earlier, that anxiety can tend to kind of feel like it's trapped in our body. So really slow movement can kind of help to move a little bit of that energy and release it out through the body. So any sort of like really gentle, Qigong or Tai Chi, or even gentle yoga before bed, maybe even in bed, can be really helpful to start to down-regulate your nervous system and get you ready for sleep.
Yeah, I like looking at travel magazines and photos of things like that, because it also helps to release, things from the day and can help put us into what we're hopeful about, what we're looking forward to in the future. So on that front, there's an exercise called sitting and forgetting, which is a practice that appears in many different cultures and in many different forms, and basically involves, this is something that's great to do if you find yourself lying in bed and your mind is really starting to race. You can scroll back in your mind in sort of reverse order all of the things that you did that day, just like sort of flipping through the chapters of your day. This also is really good for something called episodic memory. It strengthens your memory of the sequencing of events. And then particularly when you get to anything that happened throughout the day or might be popping up from earlier in the week even, that gives you what I say a less than pleasant feeling, right? Sometimes we have experiences that gave us anxiety or things that just didn't go our way necessarily. It's helpful to envision that thing floating away. And maybe you can put this in a balloon and you can see it floating off into the distance while at the same time feeling your body float and be at ease, taking some deep breaths. You can see it, receding into the background, and then just continue and go on to the next thing. And this is a practice called sitting and forgetting. It's basically, we forget not the events of the day, but we forget how they made us feel if that feeling is uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. I like the balloon floating away. And I think kind of in that same vein, journaling could be a really powerful way to sit and forget and release things. And after you maybe journal the worries out, or maybe even journaling like all the to-dos of what you have to do tomorrow, you get it out of your head, you release it. But especially if it's those worries or those anxieties, you might crumple up that piece of paper and chuck it in the trash can and just say, I'm forgetting it, right? I'm forgetting those worries or those anxieties. So journaling can always be really helpful. If you're not a fan of putting pen to paper, you can also do like a recorded journal, right? And just like say it. I actually prefer that to writing it down, where I'm just like saying stuff, I'm getting it out of my body and just letting it go.
Absolutely, yeah. Giving your brain the space to let things come out and just get things out of your head. I always found that if I slept with a notepad next to my bed, I would sleep much better. And what's funny is oftentimes before I started doing this, that's when I would wake up and I would think, oh, there's something important, I have to remember it, I have to write it down, and I wouldn't have anything to write it down on, and that would start the cycle over again. And interestingly enough, when I started putting the notepad on my bedside table, I usually just stayed asleep because my brain was at ease. It knew that it had a place for those things to go if they came up, and they never really did once that happened.
So funny, I love it.
Yeah. So the last thing and tip here is a little bit counterintuitive around, we're talking about falling asleep when you have anxiety, but one of the things that can really help that, again, from the standpoint of just getting good environmental cues, is actually having a bit of a morning routine that involves getting outside, getting some sunlight into your eyes, and just sort of waking up and getting into some activity.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do. Getting outside, getting in the sun. Fortunately, I have a dog, so she forces me to do that. So it's going to help reset that circadian rhythm and really help you to then wind down at the correct time at night when we should be going to bed. So this is our awesome list, you guys. A couple of new things in there to help you sleep if you have anxiety. We also have a couple of videos specifically for sleep. So we have a body scan, a sleep meditation body scan here on the YouTube, and we also have yoga nidra for sleep. It's a follow along guided meditation that you can also use right before you go to bed at night. So if none of these work for you, go ahead, find those videos and give them a try.